we've managed to catch up with the Tsalala Pride, which is really quite special because we don't see these lions too much at all. These guys are generally seen more to our west and our south, so not often that they come into our traversing area, so really nice to catch up with them. And you can see they found themselves a nice piece of shade. You've got the 2 females lying in the front and then the 3 males at the back there. Now this pride is quite an interesting one. They're split off from another pride, so at the moment it's a very old female, which is the bottom left female there. She is basically looking after the 4 sub-adults, which is the female and her 3 brothers. And interestingly enough, these are not her cubs. Alright, this is a female for different. She didn't have these cubs. She's taken these cubs over and is raising them on her own, which is pretty incredible. So you can see the boys are starting to get their manes. They're still quite small, so the manes are still quite little, but they're getting to the point now where they're getting big enough that they're going to be a threat to other males. And I have actually seen them being chased a little bit lately by the Majingalan males, and I'm sure if the Birminghams come across them, they would also be chased by them because they are starting to pose a bit of a threat. Also, these females are starting to come into heat. The older female, we saw her mating a few months ago. She was following some of the Majingalans and mated with them, and I believe she even mated with the Matimbas too. So she has been coming into estrus cycles, and so she leaves them, and the 4 of them then move around on their own without her and wait for her to do a thing and then come back again. But the days are numbered for the boys, I'm afraid. Given that they are getting bigger, soon is going to be a problem. They're going to end up being chased away. But like I say, I'm really happy to find them. This is one of my favorite prides that we have in this area. Spent a lot of time with them when I was at Simbambili and when I was at Chitwa, and I even saw them when we were at Singita, when these little boys were still small, baby, tiny little cubs. So they are really one of my favorites, and I really enjoy spending time with them. You can see it's still very warm. You can see by the male on the right how heavily he's breathing. He's panting quite heavily. It's hot and bothered, and it sounds like just off to our south, it sounds like there are some elephants that are slowly but surely coming this way. So I think that's why he's popped up his head to look around, so he can hear there's this kind of crunching of branches and there's sort of this movement through the bush, and so I'm sure that's why he's watching. But it's still really too hot for all of them to kind of wake up and really be too interested in anything. It's about, I would say, about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so very warm, and these guys are not going to move too much unless they get something like a buffalo walking through here, or zebra, or something like that. That could then potentially cause them to get up and get going. Now, interestingly enough, in the background there's also some pearl spotted owlets calling, which is a little bit early for them. They shouldn't be calling at this time. So I wonder if maybe there's a bit of cloud rolling in. Maybe that's why the owls are getting a little bit confused. But I believe a lot of you are really excited to see the Salalas again, and I must be honest, so am I. Like I say, they're a pride that I really love to follow, and I haven't seen much of them obviously since we've been with Safari Live. I haven't seen them in the last sort of 3 weeks, so it feels a bit odd. It's a pride that I was seeing almost daily at one point, so it's strange not to see them that much. And like I say, I really like them. It's an interesting composition to them. These young males have grown so much in the last year, and they really have become quite an asset to the females. They've helped with a lot of kills, so it's been really good to follow that progress and see how they've gone. And they're all looking really good. So the males at one point were looking very ragged. All of them had some sort of interaction with other males and had been hurt in some ways, and they all had cuts and scrapes all over them. But from what I can see now, they're all looking very healthy. Their backs have all healed. There's no more puncture wounds in any of them. There was one male that unfortunately suffered a rather nasty injury to his backside. It looked like he got bitten or clawed in his backside, and he lost control of his bowel movement. So he used to walk around with this dirty bottom all over the place. But it looks like that's healed, and it looks like he's okay. So that's good news as well. It took a while because obviously in that area it gets quite dirty and doesn't heal very well. So took a bit of time to come right. And sometimes when they feed off big carcasses like the buffalo and things like that, and when he gets oversaturated with food, he does end up with a few problems again. But that is very typical of lions in weather like this. Flat and quiet. So you would like to know whether the females will separate once the males move off. Now, in this particular pride, it's really interesting. They've had a few what's a very interesting history that they've had. This is not the first time that I've seen females split off from this pride. And generally what happens is once they've split off, they raise the cubs and then they do return back to the pride. Now, sometimes they stay with the pride and have the new cubs with them, and other times they have their new cubs and split off again. So it's quite a weird pride. They don't stick together nearly as much as some of the other prides in the area. But with these two, in all likelihood, I would imagine they'll go and join two others that make up the rest of the pride. They currently have their own cubs, which have been fathered by different males. So these males were fathered by the Majingalans, as far as we know, and then the other males, the other cubs, were fathered by either the Matimbas or the Majingalans, but more than likely the Majingalans. And so in all likelihood, the reason why they've split is because they know that they can't spend time with different groups of males, because one set of cubs is then going to be killed. And that's why she's probably moved away and she's separated and come into this area, because where we are now is kind of a divide between the Majingalans and the Brummies and the Matimbas. So the Birminghams, they tend to all kind of move on the fringes of this area, and so often we end up in a situation where there's no males that move around here for long periods of time. So it's a great place for this female to bring sub-adults and spend time with them and let them grow before they're big enough to look after themselves. Interestingly enough though, I believe yesterday afternoon the Matimbas did come up all the way to Elephant Plains and Simambili and then cross through at the gate and up into the Manyaleti. Now, they've gone all the way up into the Manyaleti, and that's the first time they've been in there for probably almost a year and a half, 2 years, which is a long time. And so it's very interesting to see that they've come past, and I believe yesterday they were following the scent of the Tsalala Pride. They didn't bump into them, but they weren't very far away at all. And I would imagine if those Matimbas see these three boys, they are going to chase them. So luckily they didn't bump into them yesterday, but I'm very surprised that the Matimbas are back in this area. I would have thought they would have moved away, and after being chased out by the Birminghams, I thought they would have stayed away. But I think what's happened is they've got so much pressure at the moment from the Majingalans, who are roaming much bigger distances again, and there's a new coalition in Mala. I think they call the Matsapiri males, and they've put a lot of pressure on the Matimbas too, and that's maybe why the Matimbas have pushed back this way. They haven't heard any lions roaring up here, so maybe they think that this is an area that they can then spend time and end up getting a little retirement area. So you can see every now and then they lift their heads just to look around and what's going on. It's very typical of lions. I'm sure they're waiting for the cover of darkness before they start moving. They are quite thin. They haven't had a good meal in the last probably 2-3 days, so I would imagine that they'll be quite hungry this evening, and so they'll be on the lookout for any sort of food item. That's why they're probably in the area that we're in. Just behind them is a pan where we often see lots of buffalo come and wallow, and so it's really a good place for them to often sit and wait and see if they can get any sign of buffalo coming down in this late afternoon heat, and try and then hunt them. So I believe a lot of you are chatting about the fact that I refer to the Birminghams as the Brummies. It's weird. So some of the lodges, they started calling them that as just a little nickname, and I suppose it's just stuck because I often hear it on the radio. I'm not sure whether I'm a huge fan of it, but it is what it is. And like I say, it becomes kind of ingrained when you hear it in the radio every day, and it just starts coming out. Okay, so we're going to sit with these Salahs for a little bit longer and see if maybe we can get a little bit of activity out of them. And while we do that, we're going to go back to Jamie and see what little surprises she has on her bushwalk. Well, Brent, it does have fur and it does have spots, and it is indeed shadow. So those guinea fowl alarm calling was her. She managed to walk past those guinea fowl, and one of the vehicles picked her up just in front of us. So our senses when it came to the guinea fowl was very spot on. And isn't it amazing to find her now? I'm hoping, I haven't been able to see her very nicely because she was lying on that branch, but I want to see her very carefully when she comes past to see if she does have suckle marks. And wouldn't it be incredible if she took us to the den site this afternoon? That would be absolutely amazing. So we're going to just try to see when she comes past. She's busy sniffing around there. I don't know, maybe there's another leopard that's walked here at some point that she's smelling. So you can see she's had her head down sniffing, and I can't see her belly very nicely at all. So tough to see, but we'll just keep looking and just hopefully she'll walk into a clearing that I can actually see her. But I'm really excited to catch up with her. I was hoping that we would find her, and when I heard those guinea fowl alarm calling, I was convinced that it could be one of these cats. Like I said, even Tingana also moves around in this area, but I was really hoping it would be her. I'm just going to try and quickly just position ourselves. Something there and is sniffing quite a lot.